Yo, what's going on, everybody? It's your boy. Just wanted to drop in because I miss you guys. Always thinking about y'all. There's not a day that don't go by where y'all ain't on my mind. And I just wanted to share some thoughts, kind of like I always do. So today, I was just thinking about some of my past relationships, and not in a negative way, in a good way, because these relationships that we've had are there to teach us something important. Sometimes the lesson is really hard, when you're going through it, and you might have a lot of anger and maybe even resentment towards the person based on how, the relationship ended. But through it all, there's always positive lesson to be learned. And it took me a really long time. It took me to get out of my own mind, get out of my own ego. I had to drop my own ego to realize these things. I understand that, a lot of these women, great women, all of them, each and every one of them, have their own things that they're going through. And they all have their own lessons that they have to learn. And that's important. That's what we're here for. God put us here to learn and grow. And so through this growth period, through these lessons that I've learned, I kind of started to think about what they call love language. I never really paid attention to it. I never really sat back and thought about it, but I know that it's a topic, and I know that it's a really popular topic, so popular that they got videos on it and books and all kinds of things. And so I had to sit back and I kind of did some inventory, about you know, how I felt when I was in a good place, when I was in some of these relationships. Like, what was some of the highlights? What was it about these relationships that made me feel really, really good when I was in them at the time? And I come to the realization through going inward that I do have a love language. And that love language is words of affirmation. I realized that I'm not a big fan of material things. I don't need a lot of stuff. Um, I don't need fancy dinners. I don't even need fancy vacations or any of that. All I want for you is to just show up. I want you to show up, and I want you to just recognize me. I just want to be recognized in a relationship. That's it. Recognize my effort, and maybe repeat it back to me every once in a while. And I don't want you guys thinking that I'm some type of self-centered narcissist or anything like that, because I know that those words get thrown around like crazy. But no, just every once in a while, you know, say, hey, you know what, babe, thank you. Thank you for listening. Or realize that, hey, you know what, babe, I appreciate the fact that you pick up the phone when I call, Eric. Or Eric, I really appreciate the fact that you get back to me promptly, because you care. Or Eric, I really appreciate the fact that when we are having a disagreement or I come to you with a gripe, that you allow me to say what's on my mind without getting on the offense or the defense. Thank you for bringing a peaceful place for me to lay out my emotions in a safe way. Those are the things that I find really important. And it's not just about me. I'm going to give that back to you. You know, I'm going to, you know, tell you, hey, look, babe, thank you. Thank you for providing me with a safe place to be myself. Thank you for providing me with your attention and, getting back to me promptly. Thank you for, just showing up. Thank you for your presence, because people choose every day. Every day it's a choice, to show up in these relationships. And showing up is a lot harder than, going out and buying expensive jewelry or gifts or things like that. Now, don't get me wrong, those are all important and they all have a place. But in my love language, in my heart space, those things don't mean as much to me. So I would just encourage anybody of age, to start really going inward and asking, hey, what is my love language? What do I really, really like? What really gets me going? Because if my love language don't match your love language, then, it can still be a problem, even though we both have good intentions. You may be the kind of person that, responds well to gift giving. And of course, that's not really my love language. You can buy me something, and as soon as that relationship is over, I'm selling it. or I'm getting rid of it, or I'm throwing it away because I'm not attached to stuff. But for you, it may hold sentimental value. So I feel like, when you go on dates with people, when you first start introducing yourself or you get back out into the dating world, don't let these conversations just be, the first thing that you talk about on day one. Let's keep coming back to these conversations long after the relationship has been established because, people are mutable. People change, people's needs change over time. Fortunately for me, I'm pretty standard in who I am. So I don't really require much. But just as a man, I would advise you, with your woman to, bring up conversations like, hey babe, is how you feeling lately? Anything changed? And just continue to have these conversations. Um, that's just something that's been on my mind. That's something I kind of wanted to bring to light. Uh, yeah, as we get older, things, people's maturity level, can either stay stagnant or can grow. So I just want to say, make sure that you are always updating your belief system. You're always trying to grow. We can get on social media and we can always participate in the gender war. We can always participate in the fuckery, but my group of people, my soul tribe, which I consider you guys all part of my soul tribe, especially if you interact and you respond to these videos, man. We part of the same clan, and we are very heavy in growth and development, mentally, spiritually, and emotionally, just all around. We take pride in being more than who we were yesterday. So with that being said, I love you guys. We're gonna win together to the end together, and let me know. Let me know what your thought is on love language, if it's something that's important or if it's just a niche topic. So, all right, you guys, y'all have a great weekend. And until next time, peace.